And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast with Rowdies Soccer to cover this week.
Yes,
it is
sir.
The first time in a while that we have a game that we can talk about, that we have stats, we have video, we have all this stuff. It wasn't just behind closed doors, Carlos. We have an actual league game to talk about. How are you feeling after all that? And a game that we can say was maybe a little disappointing, but still cool this past weekend.
I feel great about the rest of the season. I'm going to save all my thoughts about the game for just a second from now because you know what? I'm not even going to talk about the game right now. I've been doing well, James. It's a beautiful night over here. I'll tell you what, there's not a cloud in the sky. A bit chilly for my liking, given that it's supposed to be the first day of spring here. But the cherry blossoms are out in full effect. It's a lovely night, but I'm happy to be inside. Doing well. I'm really excited to talk about this game because, like you said, it's the first competitive game we can actually talk about in a while. Obviously, since our last playoff game. I think we looked pretty good, to be honest, and I'll jump into all that later on. And I think there's just a lot to break down here because it's the first game of the season for us, second game for a lot of teams, but first game for us, and I think we got off to a start that was good enough for me. And I'll say that for later. James, how are you? What's going on in your life?
Yeah, it is a little chillier down here in Tampa, just than usual. Not actually chilly, as I'm sure everybody listening will know. But I will be going up to North Carolina for the game this weekend, so I will actually get to deal with some real chill and apparently a very good chance of rain on Saturday night. So we'll see how that turns out at the game. Maybe I will have to find some type of rain jacket, or if I can get free ponchos somewhere, maybe my friends can help me out with that one. But yeah, that is what it's looking like for this upcoming weekend, and I'm excited about that, obviously. In the meantime, though, we are not just here to talk about the game that's coming up on Saturday. No, we are here to talk about as well the game that was this past Saturday, and that was, as we have danced around a little bit, a 2-2 draw against San Antonio. I will say in a little disappointing fashion because we looked like we were possibly headed towards a win on this one. Obviously, it did not turn out that way. But that is a little unfortunate in the end there. So the RBLR Cup standings, now we have to keep track of those again. We are into our predictions game, and so far our guest is the only one that has a point. Well done to Matt Shattuck of Puro SAFC, who was on last week to help us preview the game against San Antonio. He guessed, I believe he went with a 1-1 draw. It actually turned out to be a 2-2 draw, so he gets a point. Well, Carlos, you, me, and Eureka all get diddly squat for our predictions of a Rowdies win. Unfortunate, but
great start.
We have some chances to make some stuff up here.
Yeah. This is my year. I'm going to feel good. I feel good. I feel like this is going to be the one. You know what I'm saying? I should have predicted a draw because if you know anything about the Rowdies the past few seasons, it seems like we always open the season with a draw. So maybe I'm an idiot for overlooking that, but I digress.
Either way, we will have more chances, like I said, and we still need to figure out what should happen for the winner and the loser. Last year, the winner was the guest spot, and we weren't exactly sure how to give everyone who gave us a guest prediction some type of, I don't know if we could have mailed out Iron Brews to a couple of different cities even, because it wasn't just people from around the Tampa Bay area, but we'll have to figure something out one way or another this year because we didn't get to last year. So all of that being said, our next chance to give a prediction will be later on when we have to preview the game this Saturday away to North Carolina FC, that one that I said. And we actually, Carlos, have a couple more signings to go over from this past week that were announced after last week's episode of RBLR Rowdies. Before we get into anything else, really quickly, please do like and subscribe to us on YouTube and any major podcast platform. And of course, please follow us on social media at RBLR Sports. We are there on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Anywhere you are, we are there too.
Everywhere.
Carlos, could you get us started with the quick recap so that we can go over our thoughts and all of our opinions on the game this past weekend?
James, for the first time in a while, it's time for me to jump into the starting 11. The Rowdies played against the San Antonio FC this past weekend. We started unsurprisingly with Farr in goal. And his first game for the Rowdies happened to be his first game against his former club. An interesting storyline there for sure. Jordan Doherty slotted into the back line along with Forrest Lasso and Aaron Guillen. In midfield, you had Niyongabire up top, or sorry, on the left with Crisostomo, Hilton, and Bodley making up the rest of that midfield unit. And up top in the attack, you had Manuel Arteaga, you had Cal Jennings, and Rivera. Really interesting front three. And it's in front three. I'm pretty excited to see how they develop. I'm
Oh
kind of
yeah.
curious if Rivera kind of sticks around in that slot over there. He's been a fantastic, loanee based on what we've heard in the preseason so far. And it seems like he has a lot to contribute. He had a decent game, in my opinion. I'm kind of excited to see what he can bring to the table. The Rowdies did go ahead early, as we've noted. They went up in the 3rd minute and then doubled their lead in the 72nd minute, pretty late on in the game. By then, they went up 2-0, and it wasn't long before San Antonio notched their first goal of the game in the 83rd minute when I went downstairs to grab my Uber Eats. And it was really unfortunate to come back and see it was 2-1. You would think we'd be able to hold on. It was a good squad, and we've been playing well all game, but it just looked like the boys were running out of energy, and San Antonio came in with the equalizer in the 91st minute in stoppage time. To go back and, I'll talk about one of these plays in particular later on. Both our wingbacks did notch an assist. Jennings and Arteaga started the season strong with goals. Those are the two guys that we should expect to score the most goals this year for us, obviously. And they certainly started with the right foot forward. Really, really excited to see how they link up top. I think it's going to be a great year for both of them. Yeah, a quick standings update after that. Again, it's our first game of the year. Most other teams have played 2 games. If you thought Miami leading the East was a little weird, now Loudoun United have 4 points, and they're kind of up top, right? They're up top in the table right now. I mean, it's only 2 games, and they kind of surprised people with that result against San Antonio last week. I'm not going to say they're a team to watch because I did that last year, and then they started choking. So I'm just going to say Loudoun United, good for you.
Yeah.
6 teams, including the Miami, are ahead of us with 3 points. Battery have 2. Pittsburgh are dead last with 0 points so far. Unfortunate for them after the year they had last year. 5 teams out west have 4 points, and Phoenix, Las Vegas, Colorado Springs all have 0 points from their first 2 games. A surprising start, I would say, from Phoenix and Colorado Springs. Las Vegas had slightly higher hopes than usual, but unfortunately off to a very slow start over there as well. Okay, James, I just jumped in through all that really, really quickly. There's a lot to talk about here, though. There's 4 different goals. There was a lead that we blew, and there was a pretty good performance in my opinion. So let's just jump into that because I think there's a lot to break down here. In that first half, the Rowdies, like we said, went ahead pretty early, held on to that lead. There wasn't a ton of chances for them after that, but it was a pretty strong lead, I would say, and San Antonio didn't seem to trouble us too much. How did you see that first half playing out?
Yeah, well, I thought that it was played actually very well by the Rowdies. And I think before we even get into the play, the first thing that really stood out is the sellout crowd, 7,500 people.
Absolutely.
We were, one of the groups of people, because there were tons, obviously, but we were one of the groups of people that were telling everybody who would listen, you got to get out to this game. And you guys did. You guys really did. It was 7,500 people. I hope I didn't say 75,000, but 7,500 people showed up. And that is fantastic.
Awesome.
It was a really great atmosphere for the team to come back to and, play their first game in. I think that is an eye opener for a lot of people who don't know what Tampa Bay is about, who don't know what the Rowdies crowd is like. So, that is good for the Jordan Farrs, the Blake Bodleys, Pacific Niyongabires. These are all, a great way for them to get their first game through a green and gold lens.
Yeah.
But to get into the game, yes, to get into the game itself, though, I really think that the Rowdies did start off well. That's obvious with a goal, but it did show a little bit of changes from last season as well in terms of the way that we were playing. So San Antonio were a week ahead. You would assume that they would have, a bit of a jump on us in that sense. But I really think that there were a couple of different things that stood out to me from the way that we played and the way that players stepped into those roles that was really positive. You highlighted Damian Rivera already. I think that he had a very good game, and I think that he looks like a pretty good talent. You mentioned this, I think, in the preseason at some point. Could he be another Ryan Spalding type figure? We don't know at this point, but I really do think that there is some potential there. He is a live wire with the ball at his feet too. I love dribbly players who love trying to take on a defender and there were several times that Rivera looked like he could be someone along those lines.
Yeah.
Cal Jennings was somebody that I really, really liked in this past game because of his movement. Now, Cal Jennings we saw this last year. He has the ability to get the ball in a position that's kind of far away from net and just create something out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that the Rowdies coaching staff really wanted to put that into more of a systematized, or just put it into a system, I guess, where that is actually at the forefront of what he's doing. So Cal Jennings, I saw running in, up the line a lot more frequently. He would be out wide and kind of going back and forth with Blake Bodley on the left and Niyongabire on the right. It was really interesting to see how he could combine with both of them and, try to create stuff all on his own. And in fact, it was Jennings carrying the ball that led to the corner from which he scored the first Rowdies goal. So that was something that kind of stood out to me. It was interesting to see that the Rowdies kind of maybe wanted to run in behind. And this was a quote that we got in the post-game press conference there, where, they had been looking in the preseason to do a little bit more running in behind, driving behind players to get into space that was, wide open, because obviously there's an offside line. And if you time your run correctly, then you can get past the defenders and into the space that they are trying to hold you out of with their offside line. And I really think that Cal Jennings in particular, Manuel Arteaga and Rivera both did their part in getting into those spots. But I think that Cal Jennings really stood out in trying to do that the most. Like I said, it already paid off with the corner that he won. Blake Bodley getting an assist on that corner that Cal Jennings scored the header from. That's very interesting because Blake Bodley, as you noted, again, Carlos, had a lot of assists in preseason. Very cool stuff there. So, does that carry on?
Yeah.
Does that carry on through, the rest of the season? Who can say at this point? But it is again, a very promising start to the season. So the only other thing that I wanted to highlight from the first half, because I do think that there are a couple of quotes that we'll get to from the post-game press conference. But when you look at the report that the Tampa Bay Rowdies put out themselves, so this was their own recap of the game, they noted that there were absences to a couple of players there. One of them was Nick Moon, whom we all would expect to appear as the right wing back based off of the lineups that we got from the preseason. Freddie Kleeman was also out, as well as Zach Haribo and Charlie Dennis. Charlie Dennis and Freddie Kleeman obviously were very big contributors last season. Zach Haribo, unfortunately, had a lot of injuries last season, so hopefully that doesn't carry on through 2024. In the meantime, though, Niyongabire filled in pretty well at right back, and it was something that Robbie Nielsen noted, that he does not play there a ton, but he has played there in the past. I thought he had a very good game as well. And I've already noted this, but his contributions with Cal Jennings down the right side, I thought that was really, really impressive at times. So, yeah, these are all little bits and pieces that are kind of, create an interesting picture for what the first half of this game looked like. But I think that overall, it was very positive from my perspective on how the Rowdies actually played.
Yeah, it certainly feels like a new team, right? Like it doesn't feel, not that, and again, I think kind of like you said, it's not necessarily inherently a good or a bad thing. I think it's more of a good thing. You just, I don't know. I felt like in that first half, especially, you felt a lot more energy. There was a lot more, I don't know, like kind of runs behind, like you said, kind of putting Cal Jennings in that tactical game plan and make that his game, right? Let him play his game. It took a bit of adjustment because it really was kind of like putting pieces together. Like, okay, well, here's Crisostomo. Like, what's his role going to be? We haven't, it's hard to know a lot about who players are and kind of like what their role will be based on the preseason, especially when you can't really go to a bunch of games.
Yeah.
He's a player that I think kind of went under the radar this past weekend, but I think he had a great game as well. He was very active. He was very mobile, central midfielder, getting up and down very, very quickly. I think I'm pretty sure that would be where Charlie Dennis would have been playing instead, but I'm really, really happy with Crisostomo's performance, and I would not be surprised even if Charlie Dennis comes back next week, if Crisostomo holds that spot for at least the week, because he looked really good, I think. And they were creating a lot of chances between him and Hilton moving up the ball. Overall, it looked like a really quick team, which was really cool to see. We'll get into the second half later on, but obviously that might have worn out. They might have left too much energy out there on the field. But certainly did look like a quicker, pacier, younger team.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Leo Fernandez came in late, right? So we had a lot of guys that just kind of like were running around in a really, effective, smart, strategic way. And it just looked really, really good. So I was pretty happy with that. I'll talk about Niyongabire more later on because he got the assist in the second half.
Hmm.
But he was just a dog in this game, especially in that first half. He's kind of one of those players that even if you don't know who they are, they catch your eye just from watching
Yeah.
the game.
Oh yeah.
Because wow, like this guy was sprinting after every ball on his side of the field. He was dogging it out for every possession. I mean, he was just stripping balls like in the corner when nobody had any business taking the ball away from San Antonio in that position. And he did it a couple times throughout the game. Forced some really bad turnovers for San Antonio that led to dangerous chances for us. That could have led to goals in other situations, and just creating really dangerous opportunities by that extra effort that you might not see from other players. He just has a lot in the tank, and I think that was awesome to see. That was something that I think Dan and Nino put this out on Twitter. He's like a Dayon Harris type player that kind of took the next step. It's like if Dayon Harris kind of like became who we like thought he might become.
I saw that tweet from Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that. I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I could see that, and it was truly, truly fun to watch. He is going to be a problem for other teams if he plays like that going forward. And honestly, he might be a problem for Nick Moon's starting spot because I thought Nick Moon might be someone who's kind of a guaranteed starter. Obviously, he picked up some sort of knock leading up to this game, as well as the other players. We mentioned Aravo, Dennis, and Kleeman. I don't know if Kleeman would start over Doherty at this point. Doherty seems pretty solid back there.
He did.
But Aravo and Charlie Dennis and Nick Moon are all players that very easily could start in any game against any team in this league because they're top players, especially referring to Charlie Dennis, who was one of the best players in the league last year. That being said, with all those injuries, all those those 3 players that could easily have started and, are probably star players on most other teams in this league, this team looked really good, James. I was really, really excited after that first half, especially because it's such a new team. It seems like it's gelled pretty quickly. And going back to Blake Bodley, he notched a bunch of assists in the preseason that we talked about a lot, right? And then immediately carrying that over and notching an assist on that corner kick. I mean, it just seems like things are coming together a lot quicker than they might have at the beginning of last year when we were kind of bringing in some new pieces and trying to see how everything would work.
Yeah.
Obviously, we started with a draw last year as well, so no like point improvement after one game from year to year. But I think it passes the eye test, just based off seeing like how the players interact, how the game was flowing. It seemed like they were clicking much quicker than I would have expected them to, especially with all the new pieces coming in and the injuries. I mean, we're talking about Jordan Farr, Niyongabire, Crisostomo, Bodley, Rivera, Arteaga. 6 out of the 11 players weren't here last year, and they were starters. And all of them looked really good. Obviously Jordan Farr is a different type of role in goal, but everybody else up top, it just seems like they're clicking. Going forward, I'm really curious what the Arteaga, Jennings, Rivera thing is going to look like up top.
Yeah.
If we stick with like a front 3, like we did this past week, I don't know. It's very curious, and I think if they kind of run with that and they gel together, it could look really good, especially Arteaga and Jennings, because who knows what will happen with Rivera. If he gets too hot, we might lose him after a few weeks. So
I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. Long-winded way of saying that was a great first half. And I'm pretty optimistic just based off that first half, like just of how the rest of the season will go, because I guess we can just jump into the second half now, James, right?
Yeah. Well, my main thing, Carlos, for the second half, especially, obviously, we know it ended very poorly. It was 2 goals in the last 10 minutes, let's say. Let's just round it off if it wasn't exactly that.
They were very close to taking the win, right? With that last minute goal was called off.
Yeah, there's also that to take into consideration. But My main thing based off of this is, and I before I actually ask the question, I want to just throw in this quick quote that was also from the post-game press conference. Like I said, we had a bunch of these, but I think that they're actually really illuminating for what, the Rowdies players and coaching staff all think of this. But Robbie Nielsen said that they were the best team for the first 60 to 70 minutes, and then they kind of weren't. So with that being said, my question for you, Carlos, is do you think that this is anything more than first game fatigue? Because I think that anybody who watched this game can say that, especially with, well, I don't know, especially with the first goal is where I'll just leave it for now. But especially with the first goal, I think that there was some fatigue involved. Do you think, though, that there was anything more to it than that?
I mean, other than what I mentioned with there being so many new players, having to build that chemistry to start the year, that's challenging in itself. But I do think it comes mostly down to fatigue, especially the first game fatigue. The guys just looked a little bit tired at the end, a little more sluggish than usual. And after that goal that San Antonio scored in the 83rd minute, they were kind of just coming back into it slowly. And the stoppage time equalizer shouldn't have surprised you based on how the last few minutes were going of that game. Because they looked so tired, because they were sluggish, because they were kind of pinned back in their territory. I mean, Leo Fernandez came in late to try and, hold the lead on 84th minute. He came in for Crisostomo, kind of played in that role as well, kind of central attacking midfield. I guess more defensive midfield in this case, just based off the situation. But yeah, I mean, they're just, maybe this goes into talking about Robbie Nielsen's first game in charge and his tactical decisions. I think he laid it out perfectly. Honestly, I think this was really fantastic. The approach, the game plan of this seems really good. My dad was at the game with my family and some friends, and he was he always, he's one that always points the coach whenever anything goes wrong. And he's like, well, he should have made subs earlier. I mean, they were tired. He should have made subs earlier. And it makes sense. That's something that you might expect when the guy's a little tired. But then you think about the injuries we just talked about. There's 4
and who they had on the bench because of it.
Correct. 3 serious injuries, not serious, but three injuries to players that could easily be starting in this game. And you look to your bench and you have not the options are limited, let's say. There's good players on the bench, but they don't necessarily just plug in and play, especially with the players that are new, like Desart that came in the 65th minute. Leo Fernandez came in the 84th minute. You had Christian Ortiz, the kid. I mean, it would have been kind of interesting if he came in. You had 2 goalkeepers, one of them being the academy kid, and then Joshua Perez. Maybe I would have slotted in Perez a bit earlier just because he's, I think, has more of a defensive inclination. I think he's pretty good at that. He could have probably slotted in somewhere on the wing. I don't know. My point is, I kind of just chop it up to fatigue by the end of the game. I mean, it's our first game of the year. Preseason kind of just wrapped up. On top of the chemistry stuff, building that connection with everybody and your teammates, it did seem like it was obvious. You could visibly see it that the guys were just tired. So maybe you can, I don't know, chalk some of the blame up to Robbie Nielsen for not making some changes kind of later on in the game along with the Leo Fernandez sub. I don't know, maybe bring in Perez and slot him in for, I don't know, Bodley was on a yellow card. That wouldn't have been a terrible sub. But he brought in Desart and Fernandez. I don't think you bring in Ortiz or anything. So maybe there's one sub left on the bench that you might be thinking could have been a good idea, but at the end of the day, there just wasn't a ton for him to turn to at the end. Maybe it's part of the game plan about just kind of going all out for a while. It seemed like they got tired at the end. Something to consider. I don't know. But truly, we looked really, really good for the first, 60, 70 minutes. The goal that Arteaga put away was just awesome to watch. It was exactly what I wanted to see from Niyongabire. Just taking on his man on the wing. It was,
and that wasn't the first time that he had been successful in the second half either.
Yeah, exactly. But it was the one obviously ended up on the score sheet, and Doherty launches that ball from a free kick. Niyongabire again, just doing what he did all game, chasing the ball down, putting pressure on the San Antonio player, whatever San Antonio player he's up against. this case, it was number 12, who's Silva for San Antonio, who got subbed out like right after this play, by the way. It was like a couple minutes after. He looks tired, he looks sluggish, and he could not keep up with Niyongabire. Pacific just literally just chases the ball down, knocks it up over Silva, drives along the baseline back there, and then finds Arteaga, who's in a perfect spot to put that ball away. He also had Cal Jennings there. So, I mean, there was multiple ways for him to go. Sorry, he didn't have Cal Jennings there. I'm mistaken, thinking about something else. But yeah, he put the pass on the money for Arteaga. He was surrounded by 3 defenders, and Arteaga just perfectly ran into the slot of that ball. And Niyongabire put it, again, on the money. So it was just beautiful, beautiful play. And I say that to say, like, I thought we had the game in the bag by this point, to be honest. Like, we looked good. We looked the better team. We were creating great chances. Like, we're wearing this new jersey. It looks so good on the field. The only criticism I have of that is that one of our sponsors is Orlando Health for whatever reason. And they're on the back of our jersey. That's kind of gross seeing the word Orlando back there, but whatever. My point is, I was excited. I felt good. I was so comfortable that I went down to grab my DoorDash in the 80th minute, and I got back and I was like, oh my God, they scored a goal. I still wasn't too concerned, but again, by the time I kind of locked in and saw what was happening, I wasn't surprised when that stoppage time equalizer came. I wasn't surprised based on the context of opening so many of our games with the draw, or so many of our seasons with draws. So yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying I don't really blame any of Robbie Nielsen's decisions for this. I think it really was just fatigue. And I'm honestly pretty happy with his first game. We're not mentioning, by the way, how good of a team San Antonio is.
Yeah, we
San
haven't
Antonio
yet.
yeah, we haven't even mentioned that. Like, San Antonio is a great team. They have some incredible players, and they're certainly going to be a team that's in the mix for the Western Conference. This is a tough team to open against. Like, it would have been different if we're playing some scrub team. But this was a tough team to open against, and I was conscious of that. They had a game under their belt already, like you said. I'm happy, honestly. I would have liked the 3 points, but if we're opening with a draw, this is the type of draw I'm okay taking away, because they looked really good, and I can see us taking the performance of the first 70 minutes into North Carolina and getting a great result over there. I'll save that for the preview. But yeah, honestly, overall, a great performance. I'm happy with Robbie Nielsen's first game, and if this is the kind of the game plan he's rocking with, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the thing that I wanted to highlight again, like I said, all of these quotes from the post game really illuminate, especially their ideas of how the game went. It was a lot of people saying pretty similar things, that they were really happy with themselves the first 60 to 70 minutes. But I think that San Antonio, especially with their substitutions, did really establish a new type of game for themselves that put the Rowdies a lot more on the back. A lot more on the back foot than they were previously. And that obviously led to a lot more of the fatigue starting to come out, a lot more of the problems starting to come into the game. So at the halftime interval, Mohamed Omar, one of the central defensive midfielders for San Antonio, he came off for Cameron Lacey, and that was his debut for San Antonio. But then Shannon Gomez came on for Lucas Silva, and before they scored a goal as well, Bora, the guy who scored, actually came on for another central midfielder, Mohamed Abu. They had 2 Mohameds in the midfield, and they both ended up subbed out by the 81st minute when the first substitution that San Antonio made, Cameron Lacey, he actually got the assist on their first goal. So if you look at the press that San Antonio was trying to implement, obviously, that is something that has been part of their game for a couple of years, but we know that whatever type of transition they make from the team that they were 2022, 2023, whatever they do this year, it's still going to most likely incorporate that press, and that does wear players out for sure. I think that helped them bring the tired and the the ready to fall over almost out of the Rowdies players, especially that late in the game. So they scored, and I think that the goal that we saw, that first goal, it was just a bunch of players kind of switching off a little bit. And it really sucks to see, because we were doing so well up until then, as we've stated over and over again. But I do think that substitutions from San Antonio really played a role in that. And After that, we made the other sub, Leo Fernandez, for Daniel Crisostomo. And I do agree with you, Carlos, about maybe Josh Perez coming on. How much that impacts the game, I can't really say, but it would be interesting to note that there would be somebody who was at least fresh legs out on the
Yeah.
field and in the green and gold. I think that would have helped us out, certainly. But what are we going to do with the other substitutions on the bench if you're against a team this good, San Antonio, and you're kind of starting to struggle in this game? They're applying their press more and more, and they're doing it more successfully. Is this the game that you're going to throw on the 16-year-old to make his debut? Probably not. Probably not. Josh Perez was the only other guy who was possibly going to come off the bench in a game like this. So I do totally agree with you that maybe that one changes things here, but that's the only other possible thing that Robbie Nielsen could have done, short of, pushing Joey Desart into another central defender or something like that, dropping Manuel Arteaga into the central midfield. That's the only other thing that I could have seen possibly.
And that first goal for San Antonio would have been on that side where I think Joshua Perez would have slotted in. The guy that scored that goal, like you said, Bora, came in a minute before he scored the goal. Minute and a half at most. Like, he was obviously fresh legs, came in and literally just blasted by our guys over there. And part of that is because it was just a little bit of confusion, like you said, on the switching off and whatnot. But we were just kind of slow to get to him. And I think Desart might have been the guy that's closest to him, and he had a lot of ground to make up.
He did.
It was a crazy finish, by the way. It was a great finish. Maybe Jordan Farr does a little bit better on that. He kind of got beat on the near post, which you never really want to see. Well, you don't want to get scored on ever. But if there's an area you want to cover, it's the near post. It's kind of a really tough angle for an attacker to finish in. But he was able to do it. I think we just kind of got a little sleepy on that side. Tired, So I don't think it's anything other than what we've kind of just been talking about. Got a little tired. Preseason just finished. The communication might not fully be there still on that left side, and that's kind of why there was that gap of space for Bora to run through. The blast through. I mean, by the way, just sped through there, and it was a crazy play, and a beautiful finish from him. So full credit to him. Honestly, looking back at the replay right now, it would have been really tough for Jordan Farr to be positionally any better than what he was. Like, he had his arm kind of covering the front post and still just blasted by him. So not too much more he could have done there. Still a crazy finish from Bora. So I think by the time the end of the game came around and they scored that equalizer, it was just like we were just slower to the ball. The 50-50 just wasn't going our way, and the ball was bouncing around, and they got a silly little goal on a random. It wasn't a corner, but got played in from a throw in on the corner, and their whole team was up there, so it kind of felt like a corner. The ball was bouncing around, and just a really silly goal. Again, I don't really credit that to much else than just being tired. Like, truly, we just slower to the ball by the end of the game. I don't think was Manley a sub, the guy that scored that goal. I don't think so, but there was a lot.
No, Carter Manley started the game.
He was in the back.
He's one of the center backs.
And was just, there's a lot of chaos going on there, and that was just an unlucky goal. I'm looking back at the replay now. I'm trying to figure out what we could have done better there. Honestly, like, other than the exhaustion, it was just a really silly goal. There was a lot of bouncing around over there. San Antonio was really, really close to winning the game right after that. I think it was a Forrest Lasso giveaway in the 91st minute. The ball fell to San Antonio's number 10, Jorge Hernandez. But Forrest Lasso recovered really well and got back in time to fix his own mistake. So kudos to him. We saw last year in an opening game that he's made a mistake in stoppage, or I don't know if it was stoppage time, towards the end of the game. And obviously it ended up in a result for Indy that we wouldn't have liked. I'm glad he was able to amend himself in this game after that mistake and not give up at least the point we had. So
agreed.
Yeah, I'm happy. Again, it could have gone worse. I'm happy, and I genuinely think that this is a great tactical approach for the year. If this is what we're running with, this is the team we're running with. You plug in Charlie Dennis or something, or plug in who else? Zach Erbo instead of Crisostomo or something. Like, I wouldn't be I wouldn't be saddened by that. That's fine. Like, I think there's some interchangeable players that bring different types of game here. Crisostomo felt more like he could get up the field and he's a really quick type of player. Charlie Dennis seems to be someone that's more exclusively focused in the attack. It seems like there's a lot of options for Robbie Nielsen to work with here.
Yeah.
Just with this system, it seems like there's a lot he can do with the players that are coming back from injury. Leo Fernandez, right? I mean, he came in late. He's a player that was MVP 2 seasons ago. We know he has a lot in the tank to give. There's so many options for him to just plug and play here with these guys. And I truly think that we should keep kind of this formation, this approach going forward. And I think the key is going to be figuring out what's the right 11, I guess we could say, to take full advantage of that. And if I'm Nielsen, I'm keeping in Niyongabire, even if Moon comes back for next game, because I mean, he had a fantastic game. There's no reason he should be coming off the bench right now. I talked about Deion Harris in the past as like a super sub type player. Maybe he comes in last 30 minutes of the game, adds an injection of life, and does everything. I mean, Niyongabire was doing that almost the whole game. So this is not a guy I want coming off the bench. He looks really good, so I'm happy with that. Long-winded way of saying good game.
Yeah, that was my last question. Was what did you take away from Robbie Nielsen's first game in charge? I agree with you on this entirely. This formation, this attitude, this this game plan really seems to suit the players that they've brought in. That's obviously what you want to do as a coaching staff, but I really think that they succeeded in bringing in a very good roster for Mr. Nielsen's plans. And as soon as we get some people back from injuries, and that was something that they said, that they couldn't make the changes they want in this game. As soon as they can make those changes, this team is going to look amazing. And I'm very excited. The only real last question here, Carlos, is who was your man of the match?
I mean, I've been hyping him up this whole time. It's easily for me. Niyongabire, Pacific. We call it, I think he said Pacific is how he pronounced it on first name. So I'm going to go with that. Pacific Niyongabire. I can't say more than what I already did. A fantastic performance, running up and down the field, chasing every ball. Effort and skill. Sometimes you have a player that just goes in and gives pure effort and is like, man, it's a dog. Like, I want him on my team.
Yeah.
But effort and skill, right? Both. It was beautiful to see. I mean, him chasing down the ball and then using his incredible dribbling and pace to get around the San Antonio defender and create that goal was awesome. Putting the pass on a dime to Arteaga, awesome. Something I felt like we've been missing on the wing for a little bit is that speed and that skill. Bringing that together has been kind of hard in the past, and it was just perfectly well done. And he should be starting next game, like, and maybe the rest of the year. Just based off one performance, this guy is awesome. Like, I fully wasn't. I'm just kind of hyped up right now because I wasn't like expecting that from him, to be honest. He was one of the players we didn't know like too much about. He was coming from a season over there in, where was it? Canada, right? In the Canadian Premier League. Like, measuring the type of competition he was up against and measuring, his stats over there, which wasn't a ton, by the way. He wasn't producing a ton last year with his last team. He's a player that I kind of had just like not really an idea of what he'd be able to contribute. It seemed like he might come off the bench and be kind of a super sub. This game, he just shut me up, proved me otherwise, and clearly proved that he belongs as a starter. As first game impression, probably one of the better wingers we have. He's awesome.
Yeah, I was definitely impressed by him, but it will be no surprise to anybody listening so far that my man of the match was Cal Jennings. I was also very impressed by Cal Jennings in this past game. I think that his work rate was incredible. He looked just as fit today as he did at the end of last season, if I'm being honest. I think that, fatigue was a problem for a lot of the players. I don't know exactly how much I would assign that to Cal Jennings too, but God, he was absolutely everywhere. He was up and down both wings. He was contributing with, interplay on the right and the left with both Niyongabire and with Blake Bodley. I think that he is going to be a player that does a ton of things on his own, like creating chances on his own, creating goals on his own. As I already said, he got I don't know if you can consider this a hockey assist for setting up the corner that led to his own goal, but yeah, he got a goal, and I think it was deserved, not just because he was on the end of that corner, which he was, but also because he had played such a good game after it, actually, because it was very early on, wasn't it? But yeah, Cal Jennings was my man of the match. And these are two good players. We had other candidates, I think, that we could have gone through, but yeah, either one is worthy of this. Either one is worthy of this award at the end of the game.
I have a feeling one guy we didn't mention might be getting a few of these later on in Arteaga. If he keeps, I mean, he started off well. I think he's going to be producing a lot of goals. Him and Jennings up top has the potential to be even better than Jennings and JJ Williams was last year. That duo, once they got into form, was awesome. Arteaga and Jennings already off to a good start. That's not something we saw until like a third of the way into the year last year with Jennings and JJ Williams. So this has potential to be awesome, and they're already off to a great start, which is all you can really ask for after one game.
It's killer. All right. Well, with that, we will get into our North Carolina preview. But folks, before we do that, if you were unaware, liking and subscribing is free. But if you think you might need some new threads this year, you can help out our podcast just a little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com. Got it. First try. Got it on the first try.
There you go.
And checking out all the designs we've cooked up over there. There will be a link in the description, and you can use the promo code COYR to get 10% off of your order. If you find something you like, I feel pretty certain that you will if you do check it out. Now, Carlos, we have a game coming up this weekend. I will be in North Carolina to take it in, including all of the rain that will almost certainly fall on my head. I am told that I am not the only Rowdies fan that will be there. So come on, you green and gold. Let's meet them where they are, which is in North Carolina. Let's support the boys, and let's try and get the first win of the season. Can you, Carlos, get us started on some background for this NCFC team?
Absolutely. It's not a terrible drive, by the way. If you're into road trips from Tampa to Raleigh, could be worse.
I've done it before. It's okay as long as you know the right barbecue stops.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's almost halfway between where I am and back home here in DC. I'm in Tampa. So I was down there for the College Cup 2 years ago. I got to see Georgetown in the semifinal over there against University of Washington. Came up short 2-1, but it's an awesome place to watch a game. If you're going and you've never been, you're in for a treat. It's a really, really cool place. Nice area. So that being said, without complimenting North Carolina too much, NCFC is currently in 11th place. That's 2 behind us, and they've played an extra game. They're 11th in the East with 1 point from 2 games. Again, I think you kind of put this well, James. I was about to say this. Don't be fooled into thinking that standings this early on mean much. We played 1 game. Most other teams played 2 games. It doesn't really mean anything. The former Railhawks, by the way, a fun name, are in the 2nd division again after self-promoting from League One. We don't really know exactly how it'll translate for them. We talked about them a bit in the preseason, kind of like preview of all the teams. But they have potential. It's a decent enough team, but that transition might be a little bit difficult to make off the bat. Antonio Carrera is in net, probably, with Bryce Washington, Lamar Batista, Paco Craig at the back. They haven't had a ton of consistency in the midfield other than Colin Martin, Rodrigo da Costa, and Luis Perez. I've started both games with Evan Conway and Alex Anderson rotating. Mikey Maldonado has their only goal of the season so far in their 3-1 loss to, guess who they lost to? Loudoun United. Wow. Not a great team to lose to, not a great team to concede 3 goals against. Certainly not a team you want to drop any points against, to be honest, in Loudoun. Maybe they're different this year. Probably not. But early impressions are that they're maybe a little bit better than last year. That being said, North Carolina losing 3-1 to them does not look good for their early season resume. Not that this is college basketball and you need good early results to make the March Madness or whatever. But thinking about this team, thinking about North Carolina, who we're up against, it's a team that tied against Charleston Battery 0-0 to open their year at home, and then went to Loudoun and lost 3-1. Martin is probably their best player, and his partner, Maldonado or Summersall, will be responsible for creating the chances for them in this game. His task will certainly be to set the pressing tempo. They're playing at home. They're going to want to get their first win of the year. They're going to want to impress their home crowd against a team that they know is kind of a dog in this conference and kind of competing every year at this point for a title. Hopefully it comes this year. But generating offense is where they might actually struggle. Hopefully that allows us to take over, kind of set the pace, and take home a nice W. James, I don't know a ton about this North Carolina team. I haven't really kept up with them in a little bit after they kind of were in the third division for a little bit here. But yeah, they're back. It's a great place to go watch a game again. So I'm happy they're back. It's good infrastructure over there. Pretty good, well-run organization. I'm happy they're here. Pretty established fans at this point. So it's good. Generally, I think good for the league. I just don't know how good of a team they are right now. Personally, I think we can go in there and grab a result. I think we're going to be hungry to get a win after dropping points against San Antonio, a team that I think is much better than North Carolina. But I'll save my prediction for after you because I want you to go first.
Well, yeah. So the first week of the USL Championship, I like to read USL Tactics. I like to read his Substack each week, and shout out to John Morrissey because he is literally the best person who follows this league. I don't know how he doesn't have a professional job in soccer that isn't paying him all the time, unless the Backheeled magazine, or I guess they're also Substack, unless Backheeled is consistently doing that. Whoever is listening to this that has their hands on that button, somebody hire John Morrissey to write for them because my God, does he know what he's doing? Anyway, he covered the game between North Carolina FC and Charleston Battery. That was obviously last week, or no, 2 weeks ago now. So this past weekend, they played Loudoun United and they lost. I do want to go through really quickly a section that he wrote because it plays into the game that they had against Loudoun United. So the wider forwards split responsibility. One would rotate to the ball carriers in the channels on the strong side, while the other would go low to defend against a switch to the weak side. That is when they are out of possession. You see that tenant bear fruit above. Perez shows low to prevent the opposing fullback from dribbling. He funnels play to the sideline. Meanwhile, Anderson, on the other side, moves over to cut off a centering pass that would help opposing Charleston reset. It's all about limiting possibilities. Deeper in the 3-4-3, the press relied on a medium-high defensive line and reactive defending from the wingbacks to limit space between the levels. As we've established, North Carolina want their forwards to be involved, but that can create gaps when those attackers overextend. By encouraging the defense to be active in marking runners and stepping up to put in challenges, you limit the possibility of those gaps arising. The rest of this little bit from John Morrissey about the game, specifically against Charleston Battery, goes on to highlight how Colin Martin really shut down Aaron Malloy in that game. So Aaron Malloy, everybody should know that name. He's obviously one of the better players, one of the better central midfielders in the USL. Charleston Battery picking him up over this past season was a bit of a coup for them. But as he said, Colin Martin, especially leading the orchestra of the midfield for North Carolina, was able to shut him down and therefore shut Battery down overall. Now, what he said in here, as we've established, North Carolina want their forwards to be involved, but that can create gaps when those attackers overextend. By encouraging the defense to be active in marking runners and stepping up to put in challenges, you limit the possibility of those gaps arising. That failed completely against Loudoun United. So I saw some of that game. I rewatched the highlights before we did this recording, and the gaps that opened up when Loudoun United were attacking were crazy. The left wing back, or I know he was just a left back for Loudoun United, Kwame Awuah, Canadian player. He was, oh my God, the space that he had going up and down the left wing was crazy. I really think Blake Bodley or Pacific Niyongabire could benefit from their play against North Carolina in this game, but that will also be down to the play of the central midfielders. And if it happens to be Hilton and Crisostomo again, then we are going to see, I really and especially the other thing that I should say is the number 10, I don't think he was actually the number 10, but the guy who was playing as the number 10 for Loudoun United, the amount of fun that he had playing against North Carolina, it was crazy. I really think if Damian Rivera, he's going to be the third player up top, assumedly. We don't know who will come back. It might be Leo Fernandez. It might be Charlie Dennis, depending on the extent of the injury. involved there. So we'll see who plays in that role. But if somebody plays as a number 10 sitting in front of Lewis Hilton and Danny Crisostomo, I think they are going to have the absolute run of this game. I think they're going to tear North Carolina to shreds. Now, I don't know what the weather looks like specifically for Saturday. Like I said, there's an extremely high chance of rain. I don't know if that specifically means during game time, but we can likely expect that the grass is going to be wet. We can expect that the ball is going to fly around, going to be a very zippy game, and lots of passes that probably go a little wayward just because of the, how early it is in the season and possibly passes going farther than players intended. But I really think, despite all of that, this is going to be a game for the Rowdies and their intensity to really take over. I think this is going to be a game for our passing to really come to the forefront here. And if somebody sits at that number 10, it could be Rivera, Dennis, Leo Fernandez. It could be anybody, as far as I know. I really think as long as we do the same thing that we did against San Antonio, and we have Cal Jennings and Manuel Arteaga moving from side to side the way that they were and stretching the field the way that they were, there's going to be a lot of room for that number 10 to just go nuts and create so many chances and pull so many North Carolina defenders out of position that we're going to win this game. And I think that it could, depending on how well we do it, because of the conditions, I really think that this could be a bigger game. I was leaning towards 3-0, but my prediction here is going to be a 2-0 win over North Carolina.
Yeah, that's where my head usually goes, is a 2-0 win, especially in a situation like this where I think we're a better team. I think we're hungry for a win. For the sake of not picking the same result as you, I'm going to switch it up slightly. I would say 3-0, but I don't know. The rain might be a factor. It feels like North Carolina is due for a half decent performance. I don't know. They're going to be playing at home. They're going to want a win in front of their crowd. I'm going to say 3-1 is what I'm going to go with. Yeah. I mean, it's still early for us in the year. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like some sort of mistake back there, especially with the rain and everything. I'm going to go 3-1. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3-0. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a blowout or something like that. Not because we're just like infinitely better in North Carolina, but I think we are pretty clearly better. And I think we're looking for a win this weekend. I think we get that win. Yeah. I wouldn't be sure if it's 2-0 either. 2-0 feels like a very reasonable, doable result. I don't know. My heart's saying 3-1 though, so I'm going to go 3-1.
Okay. Well, our producer Eureka has also predicted a win, a 2-1 win to be specific. And if you would like to offer up your own, we are looking for the guest spot to contribute this week. So, hey, reach out to us on Twitter. You can even use the hashtag AskRBLR, which is also used for questions. But hey, it can be the same thing here. Either way, so far we have all predicted wins. Naturally, of course, that means that the rain is going to go totally against us. But I could see us. I could see this game going our way, unless something, unless we really can't handle whatever conditions happen to pop up around game time. So that is what I'm expecting there. And apparently Carlos and Eureka are joining me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the lineups that they put out there against Charleston, North Carolina, and you kind of touched on it as well when we were talking about in the notes. Like, I don't know, I'm really not particularly scared by their attack. Like, I don't know, doesn't seem like it's going to produce a ton. Like you said, their midfield might be their best strength, so they could shut us down. I could see that being a situation as well, where they kind of just cut the passing lanes and the rain is messing everything up, and it could be kind of a sluggish game as well. But I don't know. I think we're a better team, and I think we're hungry for a win. We're going to go in and get that W.
I should say there's actually one other thing that I wanted to highlight. Olex Anderson, one of their players who's from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He's actually a very good player. I liked what I saw of him in even, the highlights that I saw for Loudoun United. But the other thing is that Colin Martin is their starting central midfielder. He did not have the same partner in both games. One of them was Raheem Summersall, who's also from the Caribbean. I forget which country, and Mikey Maldonado. But one player that has not showed up yet is Ja'Cory Hayes. He was with San Antonio all of last year. He actually made over 20 appearances for them. He's a good player. if he can come back from whatever has held him out of the first 2 games and contribute alongside Colin Martin, that could actually help them contribute to shutting down those gaps in the midfield. I don't know if he's going to be back. I still feel like the rain will be more on our side than theirs. So I'm going to stick with my prediction. But I did want to highlight that everyone keep your eye on Jacori Hayes and whether or not he is present.
He wasn't on the bench in their last game, or he obviously wasn't in the lineup, but he wasn't on the bench either. So don't really know what's happening with him.
Yeah, just something to keep an eye out on. And we will move with that now into our extra time segment. And I will just say really quickly, the Rowdies signed 2 more players this past week. It was after Eureka and I recorded, so we did not get to talk about it. But now, Carlos, you and I can talk about how they signed Academy players Nick Skubis and Amari Folks. So obviously, congratulations to both of those guys, because that is awesome to, get that kind of possibility when you're so young. But so Nick Skubis and Amari Folks, they are 18 years old. Nick Skubis, who is committed to play at Ohio State University, actually in the fall, it should be noted. And he was on the bench this past weekend. Amari Folks is originally from Indiana, but he went through the Indy 11 Academy and then moved down here. He's also 18, and he was part of the USL Academy League playoffs last year with Indy. So it's a little interesting, these 2 players and their different paths here. I guess that Nick Skubis is playing locally since he was 3, according to the release that we have from the Rowdies related to these guys. So I'm very excited to see what they have. There's a lot more to them, based on the press release here. I don't want to go through the whole thing that we have, but it's really cool that Robbie Nielsen is trying to get these guys onto the team, probably trying to get them playing time, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't have anything else to add. It's just really cool that we have some young guys coming in here, as always. I always jokingly refer to this as the coolest internship you could have.
Yeah.
Because the academy contract is kind of what that is. But it's I don't know. I've always been can you imagine you're on the bench for the team, opening game, 7,500 people there, and you go back to, I don't know, pre-calc the next day. That's a cool story. I mean, you're going to be the talk of the lunch table for sure.
Yeah, and Carlos, if you want to take the last segment here in our extra time part.
Of course. Yeah, and this was something that kept popping up on my feed recently. This is really cool. The Rowdies have officially announced their first official community partner, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Tampa Bay. This is kind of going back. I mean, we talked about this with Robbie Nielsen early before the season actually got underway, kind of later on in the preseason. He talked a lot about how he wants to be super involved in the community with this club. He wants the club to be involved very directly on the Tampa Bay community. We know he was involved with charity work back in Scotland with prior teams as well, and individually as well. He's someone that seems to like to give back to his community, and this certainly seems like a way he's trying to bring that philosophy to not only continue that philosophy for himself, but also for the club he is leading. I think it's fantastic. It's great to be out in the community. It's great to involve your club with the community. That truly is why the club exists, is to serve the community. So I'm happy that this is kind of something that's actually fully underway. That's really, really cool.
Absolutely. All right. And with that, everyone, that will do it for this week. We were actually trying to get you out of here before an hour is out, but thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads. Again, anywhere you are, we are too. I am on Twitter, mostly at RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos?
At Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. You can find me. I mean, today's a huge day for sports. I've been mentioning it in the past. The U.S. Open Cup started today.
Open Cup.
Yesterday, by the time you listen to this. March Madness kicks off today with the first 2 play-in games. USF, your local USF Bulls, are playing in the NIT postseason basketball for the first time in so long. And they're going across state over to UCF to play them in the men's basketball NIT. Cool stuff. I'm excited. I'm always tweeting about random stuff, random sports, all the sports I'm involved with and like to talk about. U.S. Open Cup update, by the way. I'll put you on upset watch. Vermont Green of the USL League 2 is up 4-1 on Lexington SC of USL League 1. 4-1. Kind of a crazy result. Vermont playing at home. I'm sure their fans are pretty thrilled about that. They have a great fan base up there. They've been filling up their stadium. That's really, really cool for them. Also, maybe upset alert. I don't really know what league Miami United is a part of. They're kind of jumping around. I always forget. But they did just knock off Chattanooga FC 1-0 in Chattanooga. Pretty crazy result for them.
Wow.
As an MLS Next Pro hater, I'm not too disappointed, but Chattanooga is in a unique position, being that's not really a B team for any of the MLS teams, but still, interesting result. Keep an eye on the US Open Cup.
I also covered Miami United for the Open Cup website previously. It was really interesting. So that's kind of cool. We got a little connection there.
Exactly. Keep an eye on the US Open Cup. There's a ton of great games coming up. Yeah, it's cool stuff. There's just so many games going on, and you can watch a majority of them. Keep an eye on like the US Open Cup website for streams and stuff like that. These early rounds can be so much fun because it really is just some of these local, hyper local clubs going at it. And occasionally, already off day one, I'm seeing a pretty big upset from a 4th division team, a USL League 2 team knocking off a USL League 1 team. Pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great for Miami United. And great for you listeners to be able to hear not only the upset preview with Lexington and Vermont, but the upset that's already done. You can only get that at RBLR Sports. I'm sure you cannot get that anywhere else in the whole world. So please and subscribe to our podcast, where you can get the full experience on YouTube, or if you would prefer, we are also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Now, for the first week of the Rowdies season, and a draw, but hopefully a win on the way, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.